Sean Godbey founded Old Town Spice Shop in Fort Collins, Colorado, with his brother and parents in 2010, with an original plan to expand to 5 retail locations within just a few years. They found some retail success, but the overhead and staffing complexities of retail soon shifted the plan into a more wholesale-focused operation, supplying bulk and custom spices for restaurants, food manufacturers, breweries, and more. As the lockdown response to COVID destroyed demand for their retail and wholesale purchasers, online sales blew up. People were cooking at home, and Old Town Spice Shop was there to make sure the flavors were top shelf. Sean has a great entrepreneurial journey, a local boy who worked his way through college and worked for over 6 years in ministry with Vineyard Church before founding Old Town Spice. He has a matter-of-fact way about him and shares freely of the trials, pivots, and spicy moments of Old Town Spice Shop.
Let's have some fun.
Welcome to the Loco Experience Podcast. On this show, you'll get to know business and community leaders from all around northern Colorado and beyond. Our guests share their stories, business stories, life stories, stories of triumph and of tragedy, and through it all, you'll be inspired and entertained. These conversations are real and raw, and no topics are off limits. So pop in a breath mint and get ready to meet our latest guest. Welcome back to the Loco Experience Podcast. My guest today is Sean Godbey, and Sean is the founder, owner, operator of Old Town Spice Shop here in Fort Collins, and Sean is a longtime contact. He made the spice shake that we used for my food trailer back in the day, as well as some of our other spices and ingredients. So we've had a long connection, but I don't really know that much about his journey, so I'm excited to get into it today.
Good.
Sean, why don't we start by just describing what is Old Town Spice Shop? What does it do? What does it carry? Who does it sell to? Who are your customers?
Yeah, so Old Town Spice Shop was founded in 2010.
Wow.
And we started originally with the idea of multiple shops, multiple retail outlets, and ended up not doing that for lots of reasons that we can get into.
Sure.
But currently we do retail, brick and mortar. We do e-commerce sales, and then we have a wholesale division that's growing rapidly.
Gotcha. So really kind of across the board, all your spice needs.
That's right.
Cool. Yeah. And is it just spices, any sauces, things like that?
We did sauces for a little while and decided that we needed to focus on what we're good at, best at.
Yeah.
And so we, axed the sauces. And then we are working with a friend of ours who is bringing sauces out. And so we will have a sauce option. And he said he would make some of my recipes and stuff as well.
Okay.
And then we also have a line of coffee that we do that it's called Hopped Up Coffee.
Okay.
And it's essentially the opposite of what every brewery does with coffee, where they do a coffee beer. Yeah. This is beer coffee.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Did you know a lot about spices before you started this shop? Or what?
No.
What was the impetus to start a spice shop?
Yeah. So the founding story, my brother is it was his idea.
Okay.
He was,
and I know him, Aaron, right?
Aaron, yeah.
Yeah. He's my friend of my brother-in-law's.
Okay.
My wife's sister. I ran into him years and years ago.
Yeah. It was his idea. Him and his wife were living up in Montana, went to a spice shop there and thought this would be perfect for Fort Collins. They were looking to move back to Fort Collins at the time. And they pitched our parents, who were looking to invest in a business at the time.
Yep.
And
hey, me and Sean can run it together.
Yeah. Well, so he had his business was going to be separate, and so he was building his own thing, and they wanted me to operate it and own it, and grow it, because that's sort of been something that I can do is grow something. And so that, his idea, we had the idea of doing 5 stores in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And we weren't able to pull that off because the funding wasn't there. During our first year, our parents got divorced, and when that
they were
happens,
your main investors and the main people potentially willing to sign a note or something, even if you needed to, and now they're like, well, I'm not signing a note. You signing a note?
No, nobody wanted to put money in unless the other person put in the same amount of money.
Yeah. So here we are. So, let's talk about your customers a little bit. I know your location downtown is in kind of one of the sweet spots as far as retail walking traffic and stuff like that. It's a busy hopping place when I go in there.
Yep.
Is it mostly like tourists and stuff? Is it locals that come back week after week or month after month for the same kinds of spices? Is it people looking for new and interesting spices all the time?
Both,
all those things.
Both, and yeah. So we have 20 to 40-year-old females coming in to shop for supper or look for something that they can do to chicken or to vegetables to hide the flavor or whatever for their families. We have tourists coming in from all over the world looking for something from Fort Collins that says Fort Collins, Colorado on it that they can take home, give to their friends, give to their aunts, anything like that.
Yeah.
And then we have brewers and home brewers and distillers that are looking for.
And that's still on the retail side generally because they're not a high volume kind of thing.
Yep. So they're just looking for 1 ounce of coriander and orange peel, some grains of paradise to be able to make a wit with or something like that.
Yeah. Makes
and
sense.
Looking for advice on how to utilize those spices in making their beers, that kind of thing.
And then you mentioned the e-commerce. Is that relatively new, or have I been able to order spices from Old Town Spice Shop for a long time online?
Yeah, we have. We started with just retail, and within a year had an e-commerce site.
Oh, is that right?
Just knowing that that's the direction that it was going, and that small business, you have to have multi-channels to be able to grow and maintain business.
And so do you fulfill all of that e-commerce element? Like people order this or that and you're like putting it in little boxes and shipping it to Baltimore, Maryland or Boston, Texas or whatever? Yeah.
So we have our retail business and that is just retail. And then we have a production facility down on the southern part of Fort Collins that has, we do all the e-commerce fulfillment of orders out, and so each day we print all the orders, pack them up, make sure they're fresh, get them out the door and going.
Well, I'm imagining that the business model generally is that buy spices in really big packages and break it down into quite small packages, and there's margin in that, and that's kind of the biggest element of the value add, right? Is both the knowledge and the repackaging into consumable sizes.
Yes, that is a big part of it. We buy direct from importers.
Okay.
And so that was part of the reason we wanted 5 stores is because we knew the volume we needed to be able to purchase appropriately
for importers to pay any attention to you.
That's right. And so over the years, we have grown in wholesale to be able to make up for the volume that we're missing for stores.
So that's really the modification that you've done, is to grow your wholesale business to be able to buy in the kind of volume that you can still get some purchasing discounts from those direct importers and stuff.
Yep. And then we do direct processing. And so there's a lot of things that we bring in and we just put in a jar, put in a bag, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we also fresh grind a lot of things that is that value add. Mm-hmm. And then we also do all of our seasonings are in-house blends that we mix.
You're taking 5 different ingredients or a dozen different ingredients and put a little of this, a little bit of that, and try to mix it the same every time.
Yep.
Take notes.
Yep.
And then the wholesale, is it kind of, again, like those restaurants and brewers and things like that are consistently, for their favorite masala recipe or whatever, they're buying their
so
from you?
Wholesale, we go lots of different directions.
Okay.
We have, restaurants that we work with, companies like Music City Hot Chicken or Hot Corner Concepts, which includes a whole host of different restaurants, or Silver Grill or anything like that. We also do co-packing, so other people that have a spice blend that they're wanting to sell, whether it's through Whole Foods or King Soopers or Safeway or just at farmers markets or anything like that, but they don't have the buying power, or they don't like the processing end of it, and they just like the sales end of it.
Right.
Yeah, that's something that we will take on. We make their product, package it for them, sell it to them, and then they go off and sell it more.
Yeah, or in my case, give it away.
Yeah, or give it away.
So we have the no mistakes everything shake here that we give to people that make us referrals or things like that. And I have to say, it's one of my best swag items ever. Like,
yeah, great.
People are really, they're sad when it runs out.
Yeah.
Which means that we've done our job, kind of.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we do is we have a distributor that we are selling to other small stores throughout the U.S. that sell our products. And then
like your seasoning products and things like that? Okay.
Yeah. So, and the distributor only sells cases of jars. And so it's, a ma and pa retail outlet,
right,
or an olive oil store looking to sell spices. They go on, purchase, we ship it out.
Yep.
They put it on their shelves and sell our products. And then we also produce for numerous spice shops throughout the U.S.
Wow. So it's grown to be quite a hub, kind of, like you have tentacles reaching into lots of different places. It seems like a brain damage to try to keep track of all of that. Yeah. Like, in terms of cost analysis, do you have like a really robust point of sale system that tracks inventory and things like that and whatever?
No, unfortunately. So our point of sale for retail wise, does a good job for what it does.
Yeah.
But on the production end, it's more of a program that will keep track of lot numbers, keep track of quantities, like batches, bill of materials, all that kind of thing. And so it is a big undertaking, and
then it's kind of individually billed or invoiced from there and whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, that sounds like one of the bottlenecks potentially, right? Like, is to get that flowing good.
Yep. And so that's definitely been a work in progress and ever increasing benefits when we are actually utilizing it how we're supposed to.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it's one thing to have good systems and another thing to use the good systems and making it easy enough to always want to use. Now, what's your team? You have a pretty small team, really, for executing all these different things.
Yeah, so depending on the seasonality, just because
winter's probably slowest, I suppose.
Winter is by far the busiest.
Christmas and whatnot.
So Christmas we kill it with gifts and e-commerce gifts and working with corporate companies looking for corporate gifts, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I want 400 of these packs or whatever. Yeah.
So the skinniest we can be staffing wise is probably 5 to 6 full-time employees.
Okay.
And generally we'll get up to 15 to 20 employees during the holidays.
Wow. I didn't have any idea that. So do you fill every nook and cranny of your production facility down there, just getting stuff ready to ship out and stuff, or do you actually take on extra space for that push?
No, we do it. We do some backstock and that kind of thing, but our processes, we've grown to the point where we can produce about 400 pounds of product at a time, and then it's just a matter of getting it packaged and labeled and all that kind of thing.
I'm imagining kind of like for making dough or things like that, there's these huge cauldron style things. It's got a big stir that just kind of stirs it all day long almost to make sure it's mixed. Is it kind of the same for spices, or how do you get the spice mixed?
So think of that, but then think of it more laterally and in a bathtub that you could lay in.
Yeah, so almost like a combine cylinder or whatever.
So it's essentially it's called a ribbon blender.
Okay.
And it's this big trough that you have 2 different ribbons, and they're going different directions, and it's sort of like 2 augers mixing.
Yeah. I can see how that would. And then because the spices are all different, densities, right, and particle size and stuff like that, is that a big challenge? I guess that blender mixes it good, but then if you ship it across the country, is all the heavy dense stuff at the bottom of the jar?
So that's more on the recipe development side. And so that's a consideration when we blend, when we start a project is, what consistency do we want? What issues are we going to have with salt settling or caking or anything?
Yeah, have a little coarser grind on your pepper because otherwise it's going to move around in there too much or whatever that looks like. Interesting.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know much about spices in general, like, can we do like a 5-minute tour of spice? I mean,
Sure.
in the old days, the Spice Islands and the Far East, and like that was a big part of commerce and trade developing, is because some parts of the world had tasty things to put on your food, and other places were called England.
Yeah.
And they didn't have that kind of stuff, right? And so, like, talk about where spices are produced. Maybe talk some of your favorite spices and regions and distinctive flavors.
What's funny is I love spices because they're ever expanding. I am consistently finding a handful of new products every year that are new to me or new to the global trade of spices. Small farmers that are doing one thing, and that's the only thing they do, and an importer buys their entire lot, brings it into the country, and then says, "Oh, I have this new thing that you're gonna love,"
right?
And then figuring out how to do something like so. For instance, black lime. It's essentially a lime that is sun picked and then laid out and sun dried, and you get a lot more of these robust, hearty flavors from the lime. But then
is it just the lime peels then, basically?
No, it's the whole lime.
Wow. But then you grind it up?
Yeah, and then you grind it up into a powder, and so like we have a black lime sugar and a black lime salt that we made.
Oh, interesting.
So for margaritas, rimming,
sure,
it's black and it's beautiful and lots of fun.
What's that black impart in terms of flavor, or is it just kind of the preservation nature of it?
So you get a lot of lime flavor,
but
you also get some like tamarind sourness, and some
like a sun-dried tomato doesn't really taste like a tomato.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same idea. Is you're just giving more depth of flavor as it cures in the sun.
Interesting. Okay.
But so we bring in products from India, from Albania, from Sri Lanka, from Vietnam, Australia, Canada, Egypt, Spain.
Okay.
I mean, you name it. And so,
is there hotbed areas? It sounds like it's spread around quite a bit more than it was, I guess, in the old days or whatever.
Yeah, sure. There is numerous places that you can bring in or buy things like pepper or cumin, these high commodity products that are sort of the top sellers throughout the world, and so there's lots of growing countries that grow those, but there are other places that you can't get, like juniper berries from India, and so it's just not the right climate to be able to grow it,
right?
And so then you have to go to Europe and either Italy or Albania or somewhere like that.
Gotcha.
And then there's like pink peppercorns that you have to go to South America, or nutmeg you have to go more towards southern India or Vietnam or Sri Lanka.
There is so much, like, in a way there's more variety in spices than there is in humans or in deer species or whatever. Like there's so many different flavors, like a nutmeg. One of the things I've noticed lately is that we have an exchange student from Brazil. Yeah. And they don't really, where she's from Sao Paulo, and they don't really do hot spice there. But spice, she really likes. And spice, like the allspices and the nutmegs and the stuff that they make seasonal beers with in the fall. My wife hates that. But she loves spicy spice, the hot spice. And there's so much kind of contrast between those two kind of major categories of, I don't know, when I think of beer with spices, especially, and whether it's allspice or nutmeg or cardamom, or it's got kind of that wrinkle your nose kind of element when it hits your palate as part of food. And like, tell me what else I'm missing in that general equation. Like there's like vanilla beans is a good example of that's more different than anything else in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, right? Like the taste of vanilla is so distinctive from every other flavor.
Yeah, and part of that is the amount of flavors that you get out of vanilla beans. A good vanilla bean should have roughly 300 different flavor profiles.
Really?
Yeah. Now, I've not yet met somebody that can distinguish all 300 items, but that's what the flavor experts
how
say.
many attributes have been attributed to the vanilla of sorts.
And so, you get lots of different flavor profiles from that. And so that's one of the more fun things that I get to do is work with, restaurateurs, chefs, brewers, distillers who come in and they're like, I want this flavor. And they describe something, and then we work with how to get there.
Yeah, yeah. With a budget in mind.
Of course.
Sometimes.
Of course. And sometimes they're like, I want this. And it's like, you're going to pay for that.
Okay. Fair enough. So I feel like the Old Town Spice Shop it's hard but not complicated in some ways. Like you got all these different things going on, but
yeah, it has its complications, especially in the last few years.
Yeah.
Supply chain wise has, glass and lids and that kind of thing.
Oh, right.
Definitely hard to get your hands on.
Right.
And then you have, commodities, the commodity markets. So, growing seasons, I have to know when to buy something to make sure I'm getting the best price. And, the price differences on some of these things can be, $30 a pound difference depending on growing season.
Wow. And you're talking about, is it like 30 or 60 or?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
sometimes,
sometimes it's, $4 versus, $32.
Oh my goodness.
And you're like, my goodness. And, it's like, I need to buy 50 pounds or, 400 pounds of something. And it's like, ooh, that hurts.
Well, and most of this stuff is pretty durable, right? Like I know spites kind of degrade over time, but overall they can last at least a year for the most part, and several in some cases. Yeah.
And that's part of our purchasing power and why we grind products in-house. Is because once you start processing them, that's when you sort of start that life cycle.
Right. So if you got whole peppercorns, those will be
good for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and then you grind them in and they smell amazing again, and it's just like the day that they were picked.
Exactly.
Or dried or whatever.
Yeah, dried. Yeah.
So let's go through the evolution a little bit, because you mentioned that you were really intending on just being retail, and then things happened and added e-commerce on soon. Do you remember was there wholesale accounts right from the beginning?
So there wasn't, and that wasn't a focus for us.
Yeah.
What happened was we were focusing on retail and e-commerce, and then I got introduced to the purchasing agent at New Belgium.
Oh.
And so there was a
Sounds
year.
like a fortuitous moment.
Yeah. And so there was a year that they did a collaborative beer with all the breweries in Fort Collins. Back then there was only 9 breweries,
right?
Instead of the 20-some that
right,
are now.
Right.
And so they were downtown walking around. What are we going to do with this beer? And
it's totally went with all these brewers. And,
and
we could do some different spices.
Yeah, and one of the brewers is the founder of Equinox Brewing, and he's like, well, let's talk about spices, and so they all walked into our store and said, we're looking to do this, and Peter Buchart, was the brewmaster at New Belgium, was there, and same with his purchasing manager, and that's how we sort of connected there.
Yeah.
And started to realize that there was a lot of opportunity with wholesale, specifically for breweries and distilleries. And then after about 3 to 4 years of doing that and focusing on that and growing in that and getting the purchasing power, then we were able to approach restaurants. Once we could compete with the Shamrocks and Cisco's and that kind of thing, price wise.
So isn't just custom stuff. If you just want a big jug of cumin.
Yeah,
you can have that.
Yeah,
too.
so like one of our biggest clients is CSU, and so we every dorm restaurant we provide all their spices.
Wow, well, it sounds like you're probably in a position to contend with Shamrock on a lot of other things too. And the relationship that came about as part of this podcast, In Motion, delivering your spices around.
That's
is
right.
Probably a significant factor in making that possible.
Yeah. In Motion specifically, one of the beauties is it's freeing up my time.
Yeah.
Because I was doing deliveries and I would just see it as a sales opportunity as well.
Sure.
But the delivery part took hours of my time.
Yep.
And I can do the sales part and the maintaining of relationships outside of that.
Totally.
And
yeah.
so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't need to call on me every time you bring a case of spices.
That's right.
There's other people that don't buy from you yet that would be even a better opportunity for a sales call. So cool. Well, I'm glad that has been working out, and it seems like, no offense to the retailers out there with multi-locations and stuff, but in some ways, I would say the evolution to this more wholesale-centric is probably a better business model than having, especially in today's labor economy, where finding employees and managers and people that are going to be with you for more than 4 months and stuff like that is so challenging.
Yeah, and lease rates.
That too.
I mean, lease rates in popular areas are just going up and up and up, and so the amount of cost that goes into building a brick and mortar store is higher and higher every year. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I just met with somebody yesterday that has a franchise concept, relatively small store, and it was the tenant finished, he didn't buy nothing, he just finished it, but it was about $260,000 for a pretty small space. Oof. And that's a chunk. It takes a lot of jars of salt to pay for that.
Yeah, for them to be able to turn around in 3 years and have their rent raised because their space is beautiful.
Right,
now.
Yeah, you made the space so nice, you're going to have to raise your rent.
Yeah,
we know you're tied to it now. So you kind of hinted toward COVID season being a really big challenge for, not just your business, but let's talk about that a little bit, how your business was impacted and navigated, maybe set the stage of how were things different right before that, even than how they are now, if that's worthwhile?
Yeah, so we thrived during COVID.
Okay.
And it was, we had our issues, right, with closing down and figuring out how to do local delivery and how to do a lot of elements of our business, especially sourcing. But the main issue for us was sourcing. The getting glass to put stuff in, and aside from that, our sales were through the roof.
Well, I thought so many restaurants were closed down, and breweries were kind of struggling too because they weren't selling it through the tap handles, and a lot of their product goes out to restaurants, which also were closed and stuff.
Right.
So who was buying all this? I guess home chefs and stuff.
E-commerce.
E-commerce.
Yeah. Everybody that couldn't go out to restaurants, they had to figure out how to cook.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be able to make their favorite dishes, which meant they had to learn how to make their favorite dishes. Yeah. And to be able to do that successfully, they needed the right spices to be able to do it. And so our e-commerce element to our business we were up 700%.
Whoa.
And then now we're way down from where we were, but we also have.
But it's at a new baseline kind of on that.
Yeah.
I just was I was visiting with Juan from Julian Juan's Kitchen, the caterers, the other day, and he said that almost the same exact words, like people had to figure out had to learn how to cook.
Yeah.
And I've been a chef. I had a food truck restaurant and stuff, and I grew up in a family that we cooked every meal just about and stuff. But I had no idea kind of the magnitude of the ignorance of how to make your own damn food was spreading in America. Yeah. And I just didn't realize the extent of it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, everything like even Uber Eats and all these elements where people can literally just tap something on their phone and somebody's going to bring them whatever they want.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
But people had more
elements.
time in COVID Nation. They're like, I'm working from home anyway, and it ain't that busy, and still getting paid, and let's make that 2-hour meal.
Yeah,
sweetie.
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, it's. I mean, surely you saw during COVID the sourdough
Sure.
Everybody's looking to make sourdough starters and everything. And so it's the same way. Like they're looking on how to make curries and how to make, different Mexican meals and different, all these different ways to eat.
Huh. I never would have imagined that it was that, 700% is a big number.
Yeah.
And I guess that, once restaurants came back and stuff, I guess, what do you see in that space? My sense is there's really market winners and losers. There's some restaurants that are busier now than they've ever been, and there's some that still seem like ghost towns, and they haven't really gotten their clientele back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with businesses that were well established and had the reserves to be able to not fail.
Right.
Where had the business practices in place that they're, they could take, 6 weeks or a month and not,
completely
not
die.
have to freak out and
Yeah.
not have to file bankruptcy or rely on handouts from the government to be able to do it. And so those are the places that I saw that are coming back strong and, even stronger than where they were.
Yeah. It seems like there's quite a few restaurant openings even this month in Fort Collins.
Sure.
Last month in Fort Collins. So there's still people giving it a wing. I wonder what our numbers are overall, total rooftops. I have to think we're down just a little bit, but the city did hand out, through the government funding, quite a bit of gravy to really especially restaurants and entertainment venues and stuff like that. So I guess that made a difference too.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
What else were those business navigations during that season outside of the e-commerce thing?
Outside of the e-commerce, trucking was difficult. And so, the freight liners, the catastrophe and the canals getting blocked and everything. I mean, we saw ocean freight costs going up by 4 or 5 times.
My jars are on that ship there. So, bitch.
Yeah. And then, we had all these opportunities with these companies wanting to do, send their employees spices to be able to make something at home because everybody was remote.
Right.
And they wanted to be able to still connect with their employees.
Yeah. We're going to have a curry lesson this week.
It's like, okay, well, we have a hard time getting the glass to be able to get
right,
product.
Right.
Like we have these sales that are possible. We just need to establish how we're going to.
How's a Ziploc baggie in the mail?
Yeah. And we do, bags, and we do different versions of that.
Well, and making sure you don't sell what you can't get.
Yeah.
Because that when it's flowing that fast and things are changing, you're like, oh shoot, we've got 300 back order units of X spice, and we don't have our next shipment coming in for a while.
Yeah, and part of that's just having good relationships with your vendors, right? And so I was on the phone trying to get a couple pallets of jars, and he's like, I have 1 pallet that I can give you, and that's going to be it until 7 months from now.
Wow.
And so I literally got on the phone with every glass provider I knew.
Yeah.
And said, do you have this glass? I'll take it all.
So who are these importers? Are they all over the country then that are your suppliers? Or are they on the coast, I suppose? Because they're auctioning. What's that marketplace look like when you go one level up from your business?
Yeah, one level up from us. Port areas mostly.
Yeah.
We do have one importer that's based in Illinois, and brings things in through the Great Lakes.
Sure.
Brooklyn, New Jersey, Florida, California, that kind of thing. And so, and they're bringing in container loads at a time
right.
of various products and then dispersing those out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess they have a big facility then that's, like yours, but bigger.
Yeah. They have big warehouses that, there are importers that they only sell full skids. So if you're going to buy from them, you have to buy a full pallet of, 2,200 pounds of black pepper.
Gotcha.
Or there are other importers that are like, we'll break down a pallet for you, give you a mixed
the price
palette.
goes up 20%. Yep.
Yeah, it goes up a little bit.
Or whatever. Yeah, 5%. Well,
Yep.
interesting. So I guess in terms of the future, what are you going to do with Old Town Spice Shop? Do you have imaginations of having more retail locations down the road, or are you kind of on your path now with kind of continue to develop the wholesale enterprise and the e-commerce appearance? And
Yeah, so we I have no interest in opening more stores.
if I was going to do something, I would close my store.
Yes. No, I have no plans of closing our store either. I love the community aspect of having a retail outlet.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value for our business locally to be able to be a part of the community and have that face of the community. However, I see our growth as wholesale and e-commerce, and new products, and always coming up with new products to be able to get out there.
Yeah.
We do a lot of co-packing with companies that are trying to do the sales end of it, and so there's big growth opportunities for us there. That
if you can help them learn how to better sell these things they come up with, that can be bigger volume for you later. Yeah.
And so it's working with companies that I have this idea, I want to do this, or I want to, sell this product, but I'm not good at the sourcing, the grinding, the blending, the packaging, all of the, they don't have the resources to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And, but they're great at sales.
Yeah.
And they can, work with, the Krogers or the Whole Foods or the
get
farmers
stuff on those
markets
shelves
or
whatever.
Whatever to get product out there.
Very cool.
So.
I'm going to call a short break for potty reasons.
Sure.
And then we'll come back, and I want to talk a little bit about your knowledge grow along the business journey here, and then we'll jump in the time machine and meet little Sean.
All right. Sounds good.
This episode is sponsored by Loco Think Tank. Loco Think Tank provides peer collaboration for business owners. We build smart, safe places to help business leaders navigate every stage of the business journey, and we love what we do and who we do it with. Our model features give-back-minded business veterans in the role of Loco facilitators, and we're always looking for abundance-minded individuals to add to our membership, facilitator team, Loco community, or to feature on this podcast. Listeners of this podcast who go on to become members of Loco Think Tank get their 6th month of membership for free. Just mention the Loco Experience podcast on your application. To learn more, visit our website at locothinktank.com. That's LOCO thinktank.com.
So the question that was on my mind when I came into this is this your first business? Had you been in business before?
This was my first business as an owner.
Okay.
So there's a lot of hurdles.
Yeah, you've done a lot of things, but we'll cross some of those along the way. I wanted to ask, what did you bring into the business right from the start that were intrinsic to you as strengths, and what have you had to develop in yourself as far as being a leader or HR professional, whatever?
Yeah. So the leadership elements, that's sort of a lot of my background.
Okay.
Is in leadership, and also in putting together lots of bits. And so I've always been good.
Understand the complexity.
Yeah, understanding complexities, understanding where you want to get to, and all of the 2,000 different items that need to happen to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And so that was the difference between my brother and I.
Yeah.
With it is he's very much a visionary.
Right.
And he's like, we're going to do this, and we're going to have this many stores, and
and you're like, how many steps there are between here and there. Right?
Yeah. And I say, wait, time out. Let's figure out how to run a store to make it profitable.
Yeah.
And then we can address that.
Makes sense to me.
And so.
You're probably a brown type, brown or blue in our Halos thing. If you've been listening to the podcast, you probably heard us talking about a little bit of that.
Yeah. I would be curious to know. But I'm not sure where I would be.
Yeah. But at least you're kind of a what I would say is kind of a linear thinker that understands the complexity of all the parts from A to Z, kind of.
Yep.
And what are some of the things that you've really had to learn and work on?
So the spice industry is huge.
Right.
And so I've always enjoyed cooking.
You're like, I understand the complexity, but there's too much.
Yeah, and so there was a huge growth curve within just, how to process spices, how to, make sure there's quality, so that quality control check.
Right.
And
you mentioned the timing, like the first time you buy a $32 pound of something that last time you paid $6 for, you're like, oh, buy that in the spring next time.
Yeah, and buy a year's worth. Yeah.
Right.
The some of the budgeting elements, I've always been good with money.
Yeah.
But it's a little different when you're looking at spending lots of money and bringing in money.
Sure.
And that
cash flow is more complicated to understand than just in out kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's definitely gotten a lot better at that.
Well, and you probably have different margins on your retail from your e-commerce, from your wholesale, and so depending on the mixture of revenues is going to make a lot of difference on that gross margin.
Yeah. Yeah, and when the money has to be, that opportunity cost, when that money has to be paid back.
Right.
So if you're floating something for 30 days because you don't have to pay your vendor for 30 days, then making sure that you have that money back. And
I'm thinking about your business from an inventory management standpoint and stuff too, because there's some things you definitely want to have a year's worth. But a lot of times it's silly to have that much inventory because, you got all that capital sunk into that thing. And if it's turning every month or something, I was going to ask about that, like inventory turns. What is normal for your industry, and is it vary quite a bit by different products and things like that?
Absolutely. We have products that I buy once a year.
Right.
And I buy 5 pounds of it.
Right.
But then we also have items that I will buy, 1,000 pounds of it. And we will go through that in a quarter. Yeah. And so it that turn, when it comes to retail, our retail turn is 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so
if you put it in the store, it's probably gone in a few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's that freshness quality. Right. Our retailers and our e-commerce teams can or customers can expect is, it is fresh product. Yeah. And, we ensure that it's going to be fresh.
Do you, like, if something gets old, do you put it on sale or actually just
we
toss
get rid of it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. We won't just sell something at a discount.
Right.
That's just not our model.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
What else have been some of the areas of learning along the way for you?
The biggest that we had starting, we had rented our first space,
which isn't where you are now.
Which isn't where we are now. We were on Linden Street.
Okay. I remember that.
And we built out this space, and when we in the lease, we had a 3% escalator at the end of the 3-year lease.
Okay.
And we missed the notification clause that we had to tell them that we wanted to stay 6 months prior to that. And we missed that by a month.
And so then when they were like, well, actually, the 3% escalator is no longer valid, but if you want to pay 30% more, because the market has
70%
shifted.
More.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. And so...
Any landlord's name you want to mention or anything? Just kidding. You know who you are.
Yeah. No, and we left that,
Well, which is a bummer, because you said 2010 you started, so the market was super soft and soupy at that time, so you signed a sweetheart deal.
Yep.
Thought you had 6 years locked up.
Yep.
And
then, they came back and they said, we should meet and talk, and we sat down, and the landlord kept saying, market rate, and I said, what do you think market rate is? Give me a number.
Yeah.
And she told me, and I almost fell out of my seat.
Right.
Because there are places downtown that are renting for less than what she had said.
Way back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and Linden isn't prime time necessarily for walking traffic.
Yeah. Especially back then. Before,
right.
It was, you look halfway down the street and nobody wants to look past that.
Right.
Unless they're going to New Belgium.
Yeah. Back then, Ginger Baker wasn't there even and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. And so, we had to decide, do we want to pony up and pay that high rent?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to close?
Yeah.
Or do we want to move?
Yeah.
And so we were going into our busiest season of the year. So we paid essentially a 6-month lease that was ridiculous, like just astronomically ridiculous. Like we didn't make a single dollar during all of the holidays that year, just to see if we can make a move.
Yeah.
And we were able to secure a spot there on College where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's one of the best things we ever did for our business.
Yeah. So my dad's a farmer, and I was, as you know, a banker for a long time, probably a banker when we met originally. And except for one, he doesn't have written leases with any of his landlords.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a handshake deal, and it's actually a little below market because they know that if he has a good year and makes a bunch of money, he's going to bonus him maybe as much as half the rent.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, then he doesn't have to have this. And it was so fascinating to me, like, to know that he ran his whole business really on non-written contracts.
Yeah.
And like, it's a shame that you had to learn that lesson about what a contract actually says when probably in your mind it was a done deal. We negotiated the lease. It had the 3% escalator and the handshake, and it was done. And yeah. And so we have gone into other leases with a little bit more foresight. Right. Yeah.
And
once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah. So our lease on College is we had a 15-year.
Oh wow!
Like
total
all
term.
Pre-negotiated.
Wow.
We had a couple outs.
Right.
So we have lots of options.
Cool.
Yeah.
What else would you want people to know about your business journey, Old Town Spice Shop in general?
Yeah, I mean, we work with great customers. We love our retail customers, and they are our bread and butter, and they're our advocates. We work with our wholesale customers. They do everything they can to help tell our story.
Yeah.
And so New Belgium, has been a great customer for us for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And even now, once they've sold to another company, a global company, and they're no longer classified as small business or anything, they just purchased Bell's Brewing, and Bell's Brewing is buying from us.
Oh, they did. Okay.
And they do collaborations all over the world, and they say, "Oh, this is our spice guy."
Yeah.
And I get a phone call from Terrapin down in Georgia or Boulevard.
That's cool.
And so, we really appreciate that. And then other customers like CSU and stuff. And then all the restaurants are just amazing to work
you're
with.
Probably within your niches, you've got more connections in this town than just about anybody.
I don't know about that. I know a lot of people.
Yeah, I suppose the Shamrock sales guy has a lot of connections and this and that too, right? So,
yeah.
Well, I want to learn about Sean a little bit because I think that's a fun part of knowing where you came from. Are you a Fort Collins guy? It feels like you're kind of a Colorado guy at least. Or maybe
so
not.
I moved here when I was 1.
I didn't miss it by much.
A little under 1. And so I've lived in Fort Collins or the surrounding area because we lived in the county.
Yeah.
Back before, Harmony was much of a street.
Right.
And so we lived south of Harmony.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
interesting. And what was, I know you got an older brother. What was the family dynamic? Is that just the one?
Yeah. So just the older brother. We're 18 months apart. So not even very much older.
Right.
And then our parents, and we had a great childhood.
Were you on a farm or an acreage, or what was just a house in the country kind of thing?
Yeah, there was neighborhood.
A neighborhood in the
and so there was it was a pretty small neighborhood. Everybody knew everybody pretty much, and but we would have to drive into town to go grocery shopping and that kind of thing.
And what did your folks do?
My mom worked for a cable company for a lot of years.
Okay.
and was doing accounting and that kind of thing, and then got in an accident and couldn't drive to Longmont to go to work anymore. And my dad, he was a radio mechanic, like making custom car stereos and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
For when I was little, and then he went back to school to become a wildlife biologist.
Oh, wow.
And then was a wildlife biologist.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, car stereos was a really big thing back when well, I'm older than you, but when we were growing up and stuff, like it was a really, now there's car toys and that's about it seems like, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody, the different Kenwood decks and you get the Alpine.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So no entrepreneurial much going on with either of them.
Yeah, my dad did have his own business for a lot of years in Phoenix before they moved up to Colorado.
In the car
stereo space.
Yeah.
Yep. And that didn't go 100% how he had anticipated, and partly because of his partner. And so they ended up closing that down.
When they
moved up here.
So you were just a little guy probably at that time.
Yeah.
So, what kind of a kid were you? Your brother's quite a bit smaller guy, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Were you guys competitive with each other? Were you good students into sports?
I did some sports and that kind of thing. I played soccer for 18 years type of thing.
Okay.
And then I was always playing sports in our neighborhood, but never like
super organized
or competitive aside from soccer.
Yeah.
And then in high school or in middle school, I started wrestling.
Oh.
And then had an accident that made me stop doing any physical sports. And
is that something you talk about?
Yeah, I can talk about it. It's I essentially was paralyzed from the neck down. For 4 hours, and
in
snapped my
wrestling
neck.
accident,
Yeah.
like somebody did a pile driver or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was a legal move. I just landed wrong.
Yeah,
and dislocated my right shoulder, snapped my neck over, and went, neck down, completely limp, and 4 hours later started regaining the feeling in my body.
Wow.
And so
and you're like, I'm done with wrestling.
Yeah, and the doctor essentially said, we
don't really know why you're back.
Lucky that you can walk. And I had to do a lot of rehab and wear a collar for 6 months.
And you're like 15 years old or something like that at this point?
Yeah. Well, it was 14 or 15.
Yeah. Wow. That was a shocking thing. I'm sure your parents were totally freaked out. Did you get shipped right to the hospital and then you're just kind of laying there, beep, 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 and then all of a sudden you can kind of move your pinky a little bit or something?
Sort of. It was, the ambulance came and got me, backboarded me, and I was joking with the EMT that, I'm in my first ambulance ride and they're going, super slow just to make sure they don't hurt me anymore. And I'm like, come on, put the lights on, let's go.
Right.
And and then we got in there and into the trauma center, and they ended up wheeling me into an MRI. And at that point the doctor looks at me and he's like, can I do anything for you? And I was like, everything hurts. Like that feeling like when your arm is asleep and starts coming back awake and it's just like pins and needles everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like that from the neck down.
Wow.
And he's like, I can help you with that, and gave me a shot of something, and then I couldn't feel anything again.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah, that sounds like a traumatic experience for sure. So did you stopped with the wrestling, kind of stopped with other kind of high danger activities for at least a while kind of thing? Let that, whatever it was, heal back up and be stronger?
Yeah.
Did you stop soccer too, or that was okay?
Yeah, I still played some indoor soccer and that kind of thing during high school, but it was just just enjoyable, fun.
And then did you go off to school or here local? Did you go to college?
So after that I got more into theater. Into technical theater.
Okay.
I was never much of an actor or anything, and so I did set building and audio engineering and
in high school at first, and then continued.
And, all that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then I went to CSU, was actually I was going to take a gap year.
Sure.
And I remember it was the day before college started. And I was like, I know myself. If I don't go, I won't go. And so I enrolled in one class in Front Range.
Okay.
Just to like keep my toes in.
Yeah.
And eventually moved over to CSU and got a degree in natural resources tourism.
Okay.
With a concentration in event management.
Oh. Did you stay involved with some of the theater stuff too?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I with the event management elements, I did do still a lot of like audio engineering, lighting, that kind of thing.
So if I lose Alma and I need a podcast producer, I could probably tap you.
I don't know, maybe
a little rusty.
Maybe.
Well, most of this technology was 20 years away
Yeah,
by the
right.
time
Yeah,
you
right.
were there.
Yeah.
So what's that post-college journey look like? And what was your college experience like? Were you like living at home? Did you go to the dorms? Like, because your family's right here, right?
Yeah. So the year I graduated, my parents sold their house and moved up to Red Feather.
Oh.
And said, "You're welcome to come live with us.
Not encouraged
if you want,
necessarily."
45-minute drive, whatever.
Right.
And so I lived at the KOA
wow.
for a while in a camper.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I had a job at a local church and met some guys that were renting a house.
Right.
And so we
got an extra room.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So did that.
And then like after school, what were you off to?
Yeah. During college, I met my wife, got married.
What's her name?
Sheree.
Hi, Sheree.
Yeah. And we had kids.
Right
and
away.
So all during college, I have like a 7-year, college education
that has
just
kids
to get my
involved for
bachelor.
the last 2.
Yeah, and
3.
working full time.
Wow.
Yeah, and so,
Were you still working at the church there, or what were you doing?
Yeah, so I worked at the church for 8 years, and left that to be able to start the spice business.
As a pastor, as a maintenance guy, like what were you doing?
I started as an intern.
Okay.
In youth ministry, and then went from there to being an administrative assistant, and then worked more towards doing missions work.
Okay.
And I oversaw the facility maintenance, and then went into over everything that went into a Sunday morning.
Oh wow.
And so that's the lights, sound, timing.
Pastor still had to write his own sermon, but otherwise
everything else I took care of and helped oversee, and live video streaming and live video editing and all sorts of
kind of
stuff.
the COO for the church in some ways, huh?
In some ways,
or at least for Sunday morning.
Yep.
And then left that, just going straight into the spice shop journey.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
So you haven't had too many like major chapters. A lot of folks coming out of college or whatever, they've got a job for a year and then another job for a year, and they've had 6, 8, 10 jobs. But you really
I worked for the Marriott for 5 years.
Okay.
In high school.
Okay.
And then just a little out of it.
Yeah.
And so I had that. I worked in the restaurant and got to the point where I could do any job and sort of helped. I could cook.
They were going to make you the manager,
clean,
which was one reason you worked at or went to school at Front Range, to keep your toe in the education
right,
world. Nope, I got my college education ahead of me.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I watched an old movie recently on a trip, and it was about that kind of restaurant scene from back in the 80s. I wish I could remember it now, but that was kind of the theme is, once they make you the manager of the restaurant, then you're stuck there forever.
Yeah. Good luck.
So, and what church was this, if you don't mind?
Vineyard Fort Collins, or Vineyard of the Rockies.
Right over here on Riverside Ave.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Seems like, how old are your kids now?
So my kids are 13 and 15.
Oh, wow.
One will be 16 in 5 days.
That's pretty, because you're a fair bit younger than I am. It's going to be an interesting place for you where you're like, my nest is empty, and I'm still
42.
young and vibrant. Yeah. Any exciting plans along that front? Do you guys, you and Cherie, want to do different things with your lifestyle than what you've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, part of it's dependent on business,
right?
And part of it's dependent on if they stay or go, and
right.
And we're not going to force one way or the other.
Yeah.
My son has every intent to go to Front Range and then go to CSU, so he'll probably stay around.
Yeah.
We would like to move out of Fort Collins a little bit.
Okay. Just to see something different, kind of? You've been here for most of your life?
Well, out of Fort Collins as in, like, to the mountains a little bit.
Oh, I see. Yeah, up by Red Feather where the folks are or something.
Yeah. And so, get out of town a little bit and not have so many people around. And yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. I don't have a lot more on the business and life journey. Anything else you feel like we're skipping over or leaving out?
I've traveled a ton.
Oh, trying to set up relationships and.
I wish it was.
No.
It was more church related, missions, that kind of thing. But I do have lots of contacts around the world that I've been, trying to maintain and build for business. And I would love to get to the point where, we hire a champion for the business and then I go on buying trips.
Yeah. That's cool.
That'd be awesome.
My wife and I, we don't have kids, and actually I was about your age when we kind of decided not to push hard to do that because I didn't want to be 57 or 62 and finally waiting for them to get out of the house.
Yeah.
But we've hosted now 9 exchange students. Yeah. And part of our imagination is in the future we'll be a little more footloose and just be able to go travel and see some of these kids and meet their spouses by then and
have
see
kids
their kids
around the world.
Yeah, exactly. And so as your nest gets shallower, you may consider that to be something interesting as well, to get that international.
Yeah. I was an exchange student in Germany when I was
in
ninth
is that right?
grade.
Okay. How was that?
That was awesome.
Full year?
No, it was just for like a month.
Okay, short-term exchange.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And, went with, I think there was like 13 of us or something like that.
Did you have German skills already, or did you develop some while you were there? Yeah.
Yeah. I could get by.
Guten Morgen.
Guten Morgen.
Yeah.
And so I could get by in Germany. I could still get by in Germany.
Really? That's cool.
But not fluent by any
right,
stretch of the imagination.
Well, you're a long ways removed at this point, and there aren't that many ways to practice around here, I guess, unless you're using your phone app or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Well, you know the drill, the faith, family, politics segments. We've talked about family quite a bit already, but love to kind of dive a little deeper there if that's of interest.
Yeah, sure. So Cherie and I met at church.
Okay.
And we were just really, really good friends. When
was this that you met?
Be 2004.
So you're like right at that first year of college kind of timing or something?
Yeah, I mean, I was in college. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at the like space-time continuum stuff.
Fair.
So yeah, it was 2004 because we got married in 2005.
Oh wow.
And so.
I was imagining this long-term friendship thing, but that wasn't.
No. I mean, we were really good friends, and she had sisters and everything in town, and it was myself and 2 guys living in this house, and she set up her sisters with my roommates, and then we started dating, and then all 3 of us we all got married.
Is that right?
And so family gatherings are a blast.
Oh, that's
because
cool.
There's some of my best friends.
Yeah, and everybody's the same age, and that's really cool that your sisters or your wife's sisters married your buddies, basically.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep.
What would you say outside of just that instant friendship? What were the things that maybe attracted her to you, and vice versa?
What attracted me to her was her independence, and so she she had her own life, and she, had a great job, and was doing well, and wasn't looking for somebody to just come in and swoop and.
I was talking with somebody the other day about one of the most attractive things about a female, a woman, oftentimes is that they don't need you.
Yeah.
They want you. Like, that's amazing that they want you, but that they don't need you is quite compelling sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what she saw in me, I don't know.
That's a question for her when she comes on the pod.
Yeah, exactly.
And we always do one-word descriptions of your children.
Yeah.
Would you like to attempt that?
Sure.
Task.
So Cohen's
your oldest?
Is my oldest.
Okay.
I even knew a question was coming, and it's hard to. He is contemplative and adventurous.
Nice pair of qualities.
Yeah.
Should serve him well.
Yeah.
Contemventurous, maybe we can
hybridize
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I like that.
How about the number 2?
Yeah, Mara, my second is, she is overwhelmingly caring, and she could mother a nation, and she loves kids and loves her peers, and
tremendous strength, potentially a vulnerability at times if she tries to do it too much. But sounds like an amazing young lady.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what are they involved with? Is Cohen an athlete, a great student? How about Mara?
Cohen is a great student. He's had a lot of challenges over the years, but he is just thriving.
Awesome.
In school, and he'll actually graduate early.
Wow.
And then Mara is just right on track. She doesn't do any sports or anything, but we as a family love to travel, and so we all look forward to that and getting new experiences.
And so I've met your mother, actually. She, at least at one point, worked at the spice shop a little bit when I was down there picking up some spices or negotiating over some new order. Is your dad still around too? You mentioned they divorced. But...
So my mom actually passed away a couple years ago.
That's right. I'm sorry.
So that was tough, and that was hard on business. And then my dad is he's still around Fort Collins-ish. He's looking to sell his house in the next year or so, and then move down to Arizona.
Oh wow!
To
back
retire.
to Phoenix area or whatever, and is talking about your mom something you care to do?
Sure.
Because she was so vibrant and warm when I met her. Was she taken by cancer or
no? What? She was up camping and kayaking and doing the things she loved, and had a heart attack and died.
Oh, wow.
It was very sudden, very...
Wow. Yeah, so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember even when you introduced me to her, like it was, you guys had such a special relationship between the two of you, and I suspect that you were a bit of a mama's boy. And, So, well, God bless.
Yeah.
So on the family front, is there other things that really come to mind that you'd like to share? Any family themes, or do you travel with your wife's sisters and buddies and stuff like that? Is that like kind of your big family now?
We will. This year is the first year that we're gonna travel. It's my wife and her twin sister and their family.
Okay.
And so we're all going to Mexico together.
Oh, cool.
And should be a good time. They don't travel a ton.
Yeah.
And so it
be very special for them, especially.
Yeah. And our kids, their kids and our kids are just about the same age.
Cool.
And so they'll have a blast. And it'll be a lot of fun.
Do you prefer to talk about religion or politics, or both, or faith rather? I don't usually talk about religion too much.
Sure, faith.
Yeah. What are you still part of the Vineyard Church?
I'm not.
Okay.
My wife and I go to Timberline.
Okay.
And really enjoy that.
I was just there for a funeral service, unfortunately, recently. But every time I'm in there, I'm like, this place is so nice.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like the I don't know, the restaurant that always smells just right, or the, different shops and stuff that just, I don't know, they just do a really nice job of creating a welcoming environment there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So has that been you've been with Timberline for quite a while then, I imagine?
Yeah. We've when we started the business, we tried to maintain going to the Vineyard, but when you oversee so many elements of it, the first week we went and somebody crawled up and tapped me on the shoulder while I was trying to go to church. And they're like, we need you to help do this. And we're like, this isn't going to work.
So the 3 services that Timberline offers is more flexibility.
So we went to Timberline and like, we can, be ambiguous and
right.
or, whatever.
A little bit melt into the background a little. Yeah. Were you raised in a faith-filled environment?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No. So when I was, maybe 3 or 4, I went to church once. And hadn't been back to church since until I was in high school.
Wow.
And I had a friend that was really good friends when we were in 6th grade.
Okay.
And he had moved away and moved to the Middle East.
Oh, wow.
And his dad was a diplomat. And he came back. I ran into him at a high school football game when we were juniors.
Oh, wow.
And was like, whoa.
Where you been?
Yeah. And so we sort of rekindled friendships, and he, pretty much introduced me to who Jesus was. And,
interesting. And you started going to church with like him and his family and stuff like that,
just
or
like
just
youth
him?
group and that kind of thing. And it was at the Vineyard, and that's
interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, was there a moment for you when you're like, aha, I got it? Or was it really kind of a 1-year process of brick upon brick kind of thing?
Yeah, it was answering a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions and a lot of misconceptions and on what Christians were and who they were and what they believed. And so it took a lot of, getting questions answered.
Yeah.
Before I would entertain the idea of
Do you remember some of those questions now? Like
not a lot of them. No. Yeah.
I mean, to me, I was not I actually went to church until I was 13. Then once I got confirmed, I was like, if Dad doesn't have to go to church on Sundays, I'm not either. But it was a very kind of progressive church. I like to say I never really heard the good news until I was in my kind of mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
It was like, if you're baptized and you're from just church, then you're good. But you don't have to really worry about what you're good from. But that, that phrase, if it seems too good to be true, it almost always is. Mm-hmm. That was probably the major principle that I carried around when I heard about what Christians believed and what the good news, what the gift of Christ and grace is.
Yeah.
And it took, for me, also a lot of investigating to be like, well, there's this and all these kind of, all the Old Testament prophecies and things, and kind of seeing that fulfillment and that just even the need.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think one of my biggest hurdles was Christians themselves.
Oh, for sure.
And, the guy on the corners, spewing that everybody's going to hell and the anti-love piece.
Yes, right. Right.
And then finding out, well, that's not actually what Jesus taught.
Yeah. The WWJD has a lot of different behaviors than what the Christian community tends to exhibit.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hypocrisy is thick with many.
Yep. Yeah, and then working in the church too is eye-opening, and because you see people from lots of different ways coming, and they're like, it's very interesting to see what people believe a church is there for, and how they want that to look.
Yeah.
And the entitlement elements to it.
Well, and especially when you're at that ground level in a church organization, and because like some of us have this imagination that, if you work for a church, you're a pretty good person, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then you get to see kind of the shade that is in the heart of everybody.
Yeah.
and can get them to exhibit behaviors that aren't WWJD.
Yeah. Well, and anybody I've met that's entertaining the idea of going to a church or investigating Jesus.
Yeah.
I always tell them to remember that everybody in the church is in the same situation they are. They're all humans. They all make mistakes. They all sin. They all fall short of what we should be held to.
I like the way that that Jordan Peterson describes it in his podcast sometimes, and really the definitionally, like sin. The definition of sin is kind of missing the target.
Yeah,
and sometimes in our modern world we try to throw the target away, like there is no target. But that's, I think, missing the target regularly, but having a target is probably preferential to just drifting and firing away at whatever.
Yeah.
Anything else that feel like needs to be shared in that faith space?
No.
Have your kids expressed an interest in?
Yeah, my daughter, she's been, she's going to be volunteering in the nursery. And,
okay.
And moving more into sort of teaching
that service element a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Politics.
Yeah.
I have no idea where you're at in politics. You probably know more about my politics than I know about yours, because I've been talking on this podcast here and there.
Not crazy about politics.
That's good.
I think politicians are pretty self-serving a lot of the times.
I like the old expression that politics is what we developed so that we didn't actually have to hack each other to death with swords.
Yeah. Okay.
But it doesn't make it pretty.
Yep. Yeah. I don't like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm not crazy about talking politics. I'm not crazy about,
We could keep the party out of it. One phrase I've heard lately is that, yes, you've got the left and the right kind of thing, and that imagined kind of blue-red kind of thing, but more accurately, there's authoritarians and there's libertarians. Mm-hmm. And that's really the spectrum, because there's authoritarians on the right and on the left and vice versa.
Yep.
And so I try to boil it down to that a little bit more. Are you somebody that wants to really keep people in line, everybody except for yourself typically? Or are you the kind of person that wants to let everybody do their thing as long as it doesn't hurt others?
Yeah, I would say I'm not a libertarian, but I lean more towards libertarian.
Yeah. On that spectrum, anyway.
Yeah.
From a local politics perspective, is there anything that drives you crazy? Have you prepared for the higher minimum wages in Fort Collins or anything like that yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think the higher minimum wages and stuff are unnecessary.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah, and I don't pay minimum wage,
Right.
and I value my teammates and value my employees and do everything I can to make sure that they can live in Fort Collins and surrounding areas.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we, I think we pay well.
Yeah.
They may not
Right,
think that,
right.
but
Well, everybody always wants more, but
yeah. But I don't think that locally people understand what that will do to small business.
yeah, fair enough. You want to talk about any current events or anything like that in terms of politics? What we got? Well, Donald Trump said he's going to be indicted today.
Yeah.
We got to see what happens there.
Yeah.
Do you think that's? Have you looked at that conversation at all? Do you think that's obvious? Do you think it's silly? Do you think it's counterproductive, necessary?
I think accountability to our politicians is great.
Yeah. Fair.
And I think the DA's discretionary elements of being able to charge or not charge on a whim is a little ridiculous.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think, all
you don't want to see any politician above the law either.
Yeah. I think all politicians should be held to a higher standard and because of that be held accountable for their actions.
Okay.
on,
fair enough.
all politicians.
Yeah.
Not just
We're
one
not,
side.
Yeah, fair. You don't have orange man bad syndrome necessarily, but speaking philosophically or whatever. Have you noticed? I bet you've noticed that though. There's, what do they call it? The Trump derangement syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you know that exhibit symptoms of that? Dozens.
Decent amount.
Right.
Yeah.
It's alarming.
More than I would care to like.
Right. Yeah, you could think he's a terrible person and a narcissist, and I wouldn't ever let him in a room with my sister, and still at least have some element of rational thought when it comes to that topic.
Yeah.
Presumably, although some people cannot any longer.
Yeah.
So I've been courting you lightly for a Loco think tank for most of the last 9 years. I'm curious. The question I want to ask is, why have I been so unsuccessful in drawing your interest in what we do here?
Yeah.
I sensed intrigue, but never quite. Yeah.
I love the idea of Loco think tank, and I love the getting together with other people and helping to chip at problems and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The reason you haven't gotten me is because I generate that myself with other businesses. And so our business is very community collaborative. And so I am constantly talking with other businesses, helping, asking them
even
questions.
in exploring their new recipe thing.
Yeah,
or this and that.
trying to figure out their pain points and discussing pain point, what they're going through, and then what I'm going through. And so those elements, it may not be as organized as what you provide, but
you haven't really felt an absence of that.
Yeah.
So compared to a lot of, that's a great answer actually, because a lot of my members, they don't really come out into the daylight except for their meetings and different things, right? They're trapped kind of in their business a little too much and don't get a chance to work on it as much as they might like. But sounds like many of those collaborative interactions that you have out in the community and things like that, they develop into kind of a relational element that has some of that already.
Yeah. Well, and because of the connections that we've built in, small, medium, and large corporations, it provides different resources for us to be able to ask questions and say, hey, we're having this pain point.
Right.
What do you guys do with this?
Yeah.
And how, do you guys have internal processes that would help us?
Yeah.
And, people are so
forthcoming for sure.
and willing to help, especially when there is that standing relationship.
Do you know who Maureen Boyd is? That name familiar?
The name sounds familiar.
She developed a group called the Moxie Exchange, which was kind of a ladies' peer advisory.
Okay, yeah.
It had a bunch of them at one point, like kind of scaled rapidly locally and regionally, and then so I called on her at one point and said, hey, I think I'm going to take this Loco think tank thing seriously. I'm starting my third group now, and but I should at least have a contract instead of a handshake with some of these facilitators and stuff. And anyway, she spent like 90 minutes on the phone with me during our first conversation, and by the end of it, she emailed me her subcontract that she had used for her facilitators for the Moxie Exchange years before, and referred me to her husband, who owns the Leapin' Lizards labels.
Okay, yeah.
And Todd. And it was just such a pronounced act of generosity. Yep. She spent thousands of dollars on that contract and whatever, and I was in some ways kind of competing with her concept from back then and whatever, but it was just so generous, and I think we share that. We engage with people that have that generosity of spirit, mostly.
Yeah, well, and when you see people, especially business customers and stuff, as more than just a dollar, and you talk about them, ask them about their kids, you ask them, you build a relationship with these people, and they want to help you. They want you to be successful.
And
then that's a big deal.
Agreed. Have you taken time to consider what your loco experience would be? That crazy experience?
I have lots of crazy experiences.
You can share a couple of them if you'd like.
So
obviously the head or the pile driver
that
paralysis
was definitely
thing,
a crazy experience. One of my favorites is I was going to Israel from Jordan.
Okay.
And we crossed the border. There was like I think there was 9 of us, and I was leading this trip.
Jordan's north of Israel, is that right?
Jordan's directly east.
Okay.
And so we were sort of in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a common border used by
tourists and
stuff.
Right.
And so it was a lot of Arabs, a lot of different things, and we were going through, and I always tell people when I'm traveling with them, like, there are certain times that you just don't break smiles, you don't make jokes, you don't just, this is a serious point.
Yep.
And once we get on the other side of that, we can have fun, we could and so when we were going through customs and everything, they hassled one of our gals just because of her last name. And then we got through and to the point where they were going to stamp our passports. And they said, I'm just going to keep these. I need you guys to go sit over there in that secure area. I'm like, okay. So we go over and sit there. And I'm like, can I have those back?
All right.
And she's like, no. Like, all right, what's going on? She's like, just go over there. Somebody will be with you. And so this lady comes out and says, you guys are, going here. We were going to a conference in Bethlehem.
Okay.
And like, yeah. And she's like, who's leading, your trip? And I was like, that's me. And she's like, okay, come with me. And she's got 2 armed guards next to her.
Oh, shit.
And so we go into this hallway, and there's one chair and a security camera facing at it. She says, sit there. And they go in this other secure door. I sit there for 10 minutes, and I'm like, what's going on? And comes back. The 2 guards come back and say, follow us. Go in, and I get interrogated for 4 hours about what we're there doing, why we're coming to Israel.
Whoa.
Everybody I've ever known there, and back and forth between sitting in this chair and going back in and getting asked the same questions
and
over
they're
and over and
probably
over again.
Agitated and upset kind of or something.
And
did they have some idea of what you're trying to get away with?
Yeah. I later found out that it was political posturing, that they were expecting backlash from, the vice president was staying at the hotel that we were going to.
Oh, wow.
And had just left and had found out some things about what they were doing on, something.
Right. When is
that
this?
Israel was doing.
This is 2012 or something?
Oh, this was...
No, probably earlier than that.
Yeah, earlier than that. Probably 2010. No.
So that was... No. Obama was the president, and so Biden was the vice president?
It was earlier than that.
Okay.
Because George Bush was...
Okay. Bush 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was president.
So what was that? Was Dan Quayle? No, it was...
No, it was...
What was his name? Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were really just... They were basically spoiling for a fight, and you were a convenient softball for them to knock around?
Yeah, apparently.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
And then that was it? Okay, here's your stack of passports back.
They essentially said that I had to prove to them that why we were there, or they were going to turn us back. And so I said, well, I'm with a church group. We're going to this conference.
Well, you can call them.
These are the people that we're going to see. And they said, do you have a business card? I was like, I don't.
Right.
And
I'm a volunteer for a church group.
Yeah. Well, and I was working for the church at the time, and she's like, well, do you have anything proving that you're with this church? And I was like, well, I have a church credit card.
No.
That has the church name on it.
Right.
And she's like, only in America.
Right. And that helped, though,
yeah,
sounds like.
Yeah. And so she's like, okay, well, I'm going to let you go. And if you guys get in any trouble, you'll never come to Israel again.
Huh.
I was like, okay.
Oh, you were on the Israel side.
Yeah, we're going into Israel.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I was assuming the Arabs or the Jordanians were kind of busting your hump, but it was actually the Israelis that were interesting.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah. If people want to order something yummy from near or far, do they just go to the Old Town Spice Shop website?
Yep, absolutely. Yep,
and that's is that oldtownspiceshop.com?
Oldtownspiceshop.com.
That's
and
easy.
We have everything on there, and we have over 5,000 different items.
And if there's wholesale accounts, restaurateurs, things like that, they can look you up on there and make an appointment to come in for a tasting and spice review and discussion about what we can do for you. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a contact us form there that goes right to me. We also have a wholesale website they can click to.
Nice.
It's all gated, so there's no pricing or anything there, but there is a wholesale application there that they could fill out, and we can get them.
Once you're approved, they can turn on your pricing.
Yep.
Cool.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks for making time this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
And look forward to our next conversation. And thanks for the introduction. Or wait. Did you give me help? No, that was actually different. I've got Gabe Armstrong with Zoe's Kitchen. He's making my hot sauce that I called you about.
Nice, yeah.
The Loco Experience hot sauce is probably the peppers are fermenting right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So anyway, I digress. Sean, you become my navigator of flavor for Northern Colorado.
Great.
So you could actually put that in your business card.
Yeah, navigator of flavor. I like that.
So thanks everybody for listening, and thanks for being here today, Sean.
Yeah, thank you.
Godspeed.
Thank you for listening to this episode. This is Alma Ferrer, producer of the Loco Experience podcast. If you enjoyed this program and would like to support the show, please share it with your favorite people and leave us a review. To see upcoming guests, behind-the-scenes footage, and more, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The Loco Experience. Subscribe to never miss the latest interview, and until next time, stay loco.